Welcome back to the Amplify Your Business Growth Series. I'm your host, Lance Johnson, and today we have a truly inspiring guest, Tammy Bartlett. So, Tammy is a retired Air Force fighter pilot with over 20 years of service, a graduate of the prestigious U.S. Air Force Weapons School, and now a successful entrepreneur. She founded CrossCheck Mental Performance Training, where she helps aviators and other high performance people incorporate mental performance techniques to excel under pressure. Tammy's unique journey from the cockpit to coaching gives her a powerful perspective on overcoming challenges, building confidence, and achieving peak performance. In this session, we'll explore key themes such as developing a high performance mindset, the importance of preparation, and strategies for entrepreneurs to maintain focus and resilience. Get ready for actionable insights and a dose of inspiration that will help you amplify your business growth. So let's bring in Tammy now and get this show started. And thank you everybody for sticking around for an extra half an hour. We're starting this one a little bit later just because we had a mix up in the time because Tammy's down in Arizona and we're talking Mountain Standard Time when we should have been talking Mountain Daylight Time, I think, to her. And because Arizona doesn't change time, it sounds like, right, Tammy?
Yeah, my apologies.
No, I think that was a mix up on our end. So anyway, we're starting now, which is fantastic. And everybody who's listening right now, if you have any questions for Tammy, please put them into the chat interface. Just put them in there and we'll make sure that we get your burning questions answered as well. But in the meantime, I've got a bunch of questions for you, Tammy. Are you all set?
I'm ready. I'm ready.
Of course you are. I mean, you're the high performance mindset coach. Of course, you come to everything probably just right at peak performance, right?
Yeah, overcoming the hurdle of realizing I'm 30 minutes late. Oh my gosh, right? Here we are starting off just right out the gates with like, how do you overcome this? Well,
A
you
li-
know, we got to just move on, right? And do the best we can do.
yeah, a little bit of
Reset and fix it
stress,
next
right?
time.
Yeah. Okay, so the first one that or area that I wanted to dive into a little bit is because people hear the term growth mindset. They also hear the term high performance mindset. Is there a difference between those two?
You know, I would say that a high performance mindset is truly just a growth mindset, maybe on steroids.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
because you have to have that growth mindset in a high performance environment, or you're not going to survive. You have to understand that we can learn and grow and change, and we're not stuck with one way of thinking or one way of doing things. And that's obviously in very dynamic environments, just like being an entrepreneur, things are very dynamic. You have to understand that things change and we can change with them and we can grow.
Yeah, and this is one of the things that I think entrepreneurs really struggle with a lot. And I'm really excited to have you in here talking to us about this because one of the challenges was we kind of get in our own heads oftentimes, right? Not
Right.
knowing, you know, I guess how to tackle some challenges. There's also the challenge that we all face with imposter syndrome as well, and then we get, I don't know if everybody listening today can relate to this, but because I'm pulled in so many different directions as the leader of my business,
Hmm.
I have a hard time sometimes focusing on what is the most important thing that I need to focus on now. And so then I get a little bit distracted. Procrastination might set in and so on, right? And so having a mindset to really navigate through all that, I think, is really important. But one of the things too is emotion, right? Emotion really is, part of all of us, and it plays a role in our day-to-day interactions with people, the way that we present ourselves, but also the way that we attack our problems. And I'm just curious, from your perspective, emotional regulation, this is something I would imagine that has a huge impact on everybody's performance. Is there any practical techniques that you can use to manage emotions under pressure?
Absolutely. And I like to talk about when we talk about emotional regulation, one of the things I want to highlight to some people, because, some people hear the word emotion and they think emotional. Though
Okay.
those two don't, I mean, they're not the one and the same, meaning just because we're talking about emotions doesn't mean you're being emotional. Like you said, we all have emotions. For example, as a young pilot, when I noticed, and I'm going to gender stereotype for a second, just because that was my experience. But as a young pilot and instructor pilot, I noticed that when men would get frustrated, they typically get angry. When women get frustrated, they typically want to cry. And there's the environment of like, there's no crying and flying, and there's like the shame that you feel with your crying. You have to understand what is your emotion, what is your trigger, and how do you manage that. So, I mean, we're not actually talking about necessarily crying, but understanding yourself is a key piece of this. So, for example, when you talk about emotional regulation, one of the best things you can do is to prepare mentally how you're going to handle struggles. So, a lot of people, and let's use an emergency in an aircraft for an example. A lot of people think about what are the steps they're going to apply when they have this emergency. And we go through that stuff all the time. And you can think of it in your business. If something happens, what am I going to do? You may go through the steps. A lot of people unfortunately don't. They just go, I hope that doesn't happen, and they don't plan for it. So the first step is actually plan, as if that thing happened, what you're going to do step by step. But if we step into the emotional piece of it, you want to actually think through how you want to think, feel, and respond under challenging circumstances. So what that means is that what you should do is you should literally think through what keeps you up at night. What is that thing that makes you go, oh my gosh, if this happens, what am I going to do? If you stop there and just go, I hope that doesn't happen, you're not doing enough.
Yeah.
So the first step is truly to go through as if that thing actually happened, and step by step in detail what you're going to do all the way through to the end. And I like to say to include how you're going to think, feel, and respond, because a lot of us, again, we plan for the thing, but we don't plan for the emotions of it. How do I want to act if something challenging happens? What kind of presence do I want to have? What emotions do I want to bring to the surface? And think through that. Because the thing is that even if that particular thing doesn't happen, and over time you should build up an arsenal of things, various things that you're preparing for. Even if that particular thing never happens, and I hope it doesn't, you'll be more mentally prepared to handle any challenge, even those you haven't practiced for, because you've thought through how you want to think, feel, and respond.
I love this because I don't know how many businesses actually probably do that, but it's really sound advice. It's just like the fire drills that we all went through as kids in schools, right? In terms of practicing it. If you God forbid there's a fire, we want everybody to be able to go through the processes with a little bit of muscle memory, right? That
Right.
will help soften some of the emotional response to make sure that people get out of that building. And I'd imagine, that must be a core part of the training that anybody in the military is going through, in particular pilots, right? Where it's mission critical if anything were to go wrong while you're up there in the air. And so walking through that, building the understanding as to what the next step is going to be is
Right.
so critical. From a business standpoint, I was just this brings up. I was talking to a fellow entrepreneur, and he was saying that in their business right now they've had a lot of turmoil because of some changes just that have been happening that are outside of their control around the tariffs between Canada and the U.S. and so there's a lot of uncertainty, and so they're not sure from a revenue standpoint if the revenue that they had projected is actually going to be there because of some of these changes. And then that has a ripple effect into, okay, so what are we going to do from a workforce planning standpoint? We're not going to need as many people, so how do we adapt our business around the fact that we might not have the revenue, we might have to lay off people? What are the actions there? Who's taking on what in this contingency plan? And I think that's exactly what you're talking about too, right? Where it's like, okay, so I have to think through every aspect of my business and have these contingency plans discussed with the senior teams, I guess, that need to be impacted in that particular example, right?
Absolutely. And I think, one argument for people to do this, because a lot of times people will think, well, I'm so busy. I have a million things on my plate. I don't have time to plan for the what ifs. Like, because
Yeah,
what if that doesn't happen? That's a waste of time.
yeah,
And the first argument is back to my first point, is that even if that thing never happens, it's not a waste of time, because if you prepare mentally, it's helping you with any challenge. But the other thing I want to highlight is that oftentimes when we are worried about something, I like to say that like half our brain is just completely inaccessible. So, for example, I'll give you a very simple example. I give keynote speeches and I give them over the internet. And one of my fears is that I'm going to lose my internet in the middle of this keynote speech. And if I'm giving this speech and I lose my, and I'm worried that I might lose my internet, literally part of my brain is like just locked up. It's distracted and I'm not completely in the present moment. So what I do is for in this situation, I actually literally record the entire keynote and put it on an unlisted YouTube channel and send it to them in advance and say, if we lose comms, go to this. This is going to be, you can finish the keynote and still get the whole keynote. And that allows my brain to relax and go, okay, I got it solved. And now I have the entirety of my brain. So that's another argument for people to actually plan for those what ifs.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. I just actually had an experience where I wish I would have went through this process and had this conversation with you before this, because a few weeks ago I was emceeing a conference. And so I had all my tech and everything, right? I was working off of an iPad and whatnot, and the iPad went down right at the beginning. I did my intro, and then we brought on a speaker, and then I came back to do the introduction of the next speaker, and it was dark. It's like, oh no, well, my backup plan should have been that I had a paper version or some other device that I could quickly jump onto, but I hadn't gone through that preparedness, right? And so there was some dead time, which is never a good thing in terms of events, that's for sure.
Yeah, when I was giving my keynote and I was talking about being prepared for the unexpected, I had a situation too where they were using my computer and the slides froze up. And we kind of paused for a minute, and I finally just said, "We're just keep going." And it was funny because the audience was like, "Wow, did you plan that?" I'm like, "No, I didn't plan that." Like, because that was like it was just part of it. Because then they just we did something else. But I'm like, "We're just gonna keep going because things happen, right?"
Yeah, so for you, that kind of almost can roll into one of the lessons. Like you said, it's like, well, was that planned or not planned? Who knows,
Yeah,
right?
just go with it.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. So now, like you said, a lot of people who are going to be listening here are going to be saying, well, I don't have enough time to get through the things that I need to get done, let alone start planning out all these things that are potential things to happen. Obviously, the advice is try to find that time. But let's talk about it more from a practical standpoint. When you're working or coaching with some of your clients, and there is that challenge that they have, how do you suggest that they find that time, I guess, or carve out the time, because it is so important to do it? Do you have any advice there at all?
Well, like you said, first of all, you do need to carve it out. You need to actually sit down at the beginning of your week and go, these are the times I'm going to do work, and make it a priority, like block it out in your schedule, make it happen. But I think the bigger piece to it is the prioritization piece of it,
Okay.
and figuring out, again, we a lot of times don't sit down and plan the schedule out because we don't have time, right? The other thing we don't do is we don't prioritize because we don't have the time. I'm just going to start digging at it. So, and think I'm going to get somewhere. And then the end of the day, we feel like we didn't get anywhere. And part of progress is actually feeling like you got somewhere. If you have a list of 100 things, even if you get 5 done, you don't feel like you got anywhere. So I use a technique where I call it the top 3. So it's a little silly, but I like paper. So I literally have a piece of paper where I divide in thirds, like top third, middle third, bottom third. And the top I leave blank. The middle is like a list of all those things that are like, I don't have to do them now, but if I can get to them, I want to. And then the tertiary is the bottom, where it's kind of like, that'd be nice, but it's probably not going to happen.
Okay.
And I list it on paper, but then the top that's blank, I literally take a sticky and I put on the sticky the 3 things that I want to get done that day.
Hmm.
Absolutely get done that day. So when I finish, typically those 3 things are done, and I can go, yes, I did it. I did these 3 things, which doesn't seem like a lot. I mean, it's less than the 5 we talked about in the list of 100, but it allows me to feel successful and more energized and instead of drained. And it also, sometimes you actually will dig into that secondary line, and then you'll be like, oh, look what I got done today. And you can see the movement of these things shifting around versus just kind of this ever increasing list that never ends, right? So that's a
Yeah.
simple way to do it, but that a lot of it is in our mindset. And when we feel mentally drained, we're not very effective and efficient. And that's a lot of the problem. A lot of people think about physical energy, they think about sleep and working out and eating, but we don't think about our mental energy and we don't protect it like we should.
Yeah, yeah. I want to go down that road a little bit as well, but before I do so, I'm just one of the things that I find anyway is that I build that list. I highlight the ones that are like these were the most critical ones to get done. And what I've been trying to do is looking at the list and going, okay, well, instead of these being the quick and easy ones to check off just to get them off my list, I've been spending a lot more time really focused on trying to attack the things that have the greatest potential impact on my business.
Absolutely. That's
Now,
smart.
yeah, well, and that's been a shift though for me because, and I wanted to ask you about that because I think there's two trains of thought there, right? Sometimes if you can just check off a bunch of these easy tasks and get them going, then from a mental standpoint, I can see how that would be like, okay, I'm in this groove, I'm seeing some success, and I've got these quick wins, right?
Hmm.
Versus the ones sometimes those are big tasks, right, and that take a lot of time and effort, and so
Hmm.
it takes me a while to get through it. Obviously, when I'm done that big task, I feel really good about it, but I don't get that quick reinforcement of yes, I'm
Right.
on a path to success here now. So in that situation, how do you like what do you recommend? Do you recommend get a few wins and then jump onto a big one? Do you recommend just starting with the most important, the biggest impact ones first?
Well, if you want to go back to like the top three, you could always basically pick that big task and then two smaller ones so you can definitely check them off. But the other thing that you can do is if you have some big daunting thing, it's probably not just one thing. Like
Mm,
you might need to break that thing up and go, okay, I know it's going to take me, 10 hours to get this done. I only
yeah,
have one a day. Say, I'm going to work 1 hour a day on that thing. And that way you can still check it off and say, I did it. But, making it a plan, that kind of leads me into the whole idea of progress based goals, which is a really important thing to talk about. So, oftentimes people will have their outcome based goals, their end goal that they want to achieve, and they don't think about progress based goals, or they've never even heard about it, or they utilize them but they've never thought about it like that. So for example, I'll use two things to help kind of explain this. So most people, if they're going to walk to the top of a mountain, people look at the top of the mountain and go, yep, I'm going there. But when you
yeah,
walk towards the top of the mountain, you're not like staring at the mountain walking up. First of all, you're going to trip, you're going to get lost, you're probably going to get hurt. We don't do that, right? So we go, that's where I'm going. I'm head down on the trail going this far. I'm going to go to that rock. I'm going to go to that tree. The key is every once in a while, stop, take a break, turn around and go, wow, look how far I've come.
mm,
And also go, there's the top of the mountain again. Now, relating this to how do we implement this in life? That's a great analogy, Tammy, but how do I actually apply that? So, progress based goals being the effort and the work you put in towards the thing. So, using my daughter in a cross country race, for example, she may have a goal of breaking 20 minutes on a 5K. That's
okay,
her end outcome based goal. If she does not achieve that, is she a failure? No, she's not, right? But she might feel like one if she only set this outcome based goal and had nothing else alongside of it. So, what we need to do is we find the things that help us accomplish that thing. So, for her, we'll say for, the 2 weeks up to the race that she's going to want to try and meet this goal, we create a chart that says, okay, it has, boxes on it you can check. I slept 8 hours. I ate good. I hydrated. I mentally
mm,
practiced my race. I got in a good workout. I took my supplements. Whatever those things are that help you accomplish that. And in that way, if she doesn't meet the goal at that mark, she can look back and go, "Hey, I put in the effort. I put in the work. Now I just need to keep going and
yeah,
try again." Because otherwise, we feel like a failure, and that's how it is in entrepreneurial world as well. Have those marks along the way that I did work. Like when my little one leaves gymnastics, we talk about, hey, where did you have a success? Where did you put in really good effort? Even if you didn't get anywhere, where did you work really, really hard? And where did you make some progress? Even if you didn't accomplish the thing, you made some progress. Because then she could walk away, even if she didn't get a new skill or whatever it is, going, I did good work today. And we all need to do that.
yeah, yeah. Like you said, and that's going to protect you mentally, right? It's
Right.
gonna make sure that you're looking at things through the lens of positivity as opposed to, oh, I'm a failure, right?
Yeah, so speaking of that positivity, it's how do you shift that? Like we talk about being positive and it's it's a lot of lip service. But if you truly think about it, for example, my little gymnast, there should may have been a coach in her life that's not as positive as the rest. So, she's always doing something wrong and it's the same two things. I'm like, okay, if it's the same two things, what are those two things? And as soon as you start working on that skill, you got to work on those things and try not to do those two things. She's like, but always something. I said, well, here's the deal. I said, consider it a success when you're not getting yelled at for those two things anymore, but you're getting yelled at for something new because now it's a new challenge. It means that you didn't screw up those things anymore and you're screwing something else up. So think of that as progress. How are you going to look at it? You going to let it beat you down, or are you going to let it go? Here we go. Which thing what can we move on to something else that's not right?
That's so good. Yeah, and as you've been talking, I keep thinking like when you're talking about the progress goals, it's kind of like that analogy, right? About how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And
It
so you
is.
can take that big task, that big most important thing that you need to be getting done today, that's going to have the biggest impact on your business. And if it is just one thing that you have to get done today, we'll break that into a few smaller steps along that path of success, right?
Right. And there's also the idea of, making sure that we, again, protecting that mental energy, set you put your phone away for, maybe you can't do it for an hour. Maybe you'll never survive an hour without looking at your phone. Okay. Then you need to set a smaller goal, make it 10 minutes, make it 50. I don't care. But wherever you can start increasing your focus, because that's part of the problem too. We lose our focus because we're multitasking. Humans don't actually, we're quickly hopping from thing to thing. We're not actually multitasking, right? Because our brains truly can't do that. It's just super fast hopping. And that's not really very healthy for our brain to be effective. So that's why we block out that time and then set those distractions aside, you
Yeah.
know.
Well, yeah, talk to me a little bit more about that because I think this is a problem that has accelerated in recent years. And I know for myself, just speaking from experience, these damn phones and the apps that are on it, right? Most of these social apps and stuff, they're wired to really distract you and keep you engaged on those platforms. And the doom scrolling, all that is happening, and we lose like an hour just evaporates like that, it seems like. And so I
Yeah.
think we're in like it's almost like a pandemic or an epidemic anyway of focus. Like it's really really difficult, and that's going to be the biggest thief, I would think, of high performance results is distraction, right?
Right. I
So
think that, yeah, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, so you're saying like time block, just like if it can't be an hour, do 10 minutes. Any other advice that you can give to entrepreneurs with the distractions that they have coming at them, including their phone, because we're only humans as well.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful to take that reset time between what you're doing. Um, there's two different ways I think about this. First of all, I like to think about self-care in the sense of self-care throughout. Like, yeah, I'm an advocate of going and getting a massage. I'm an advocate of, taking a vacation, all those things.
Yep.
But don't wait. Like, we don't need to wait until like, oh, I need a vacation. Like, how do you find calm in the chaos? Like, where do you find peace in your day? Where can you? So this might sound silly, but when I'm blow drying my hair for some reason, I'm like, okay, I can't do anything else right now. I'm just going to breathe. I'm just going to be calm. Like, there's no reason I can't rush this. Like, so why am I all, like, when you're driving your kids to and from school or whatever, whenever you notice you're reacting, this is where I say emotions are like an early warning radar.
Mm,
So I always notice my emotions, especially if they're jumpy or agitated, or I'm like, wait, usually it's somehow I'm being selfish. I'm not getting something I want. I can't get back, like, I was going to sit on the couch, but my son wants to go driving because he's going to get his license soon. And that's not what I wanted to do. And I'm getting irritated and then take a breath and go, hey, you know what? I can just go sit in the car and, whatever. Like, where can you find that peace to take breaths in between or while you're doing things? Because I think too many people are like on edge all the time until they have their massage, until they
yeah.
have, or whatever it might be. instead of trying to weave it into that calm and the chaos and just find those moments. So the second thing that's tied into that is I think it's truly important for us to take a minute. So the analogy I like to use for this is if you're going to go on a vacation, let's say you're going on back to back vacations, you're going from the beach to the mountains,
Okay.
and you think you're going to have a day, come home, repack, and be on your way. I pick you up at the airport from the beach and I say, I'm sorry, we're going right to the mountains. And you're like, wait, what? I don't have the right stuff. I don't have what I need. And I think that that's how a lot of people mentally go through life. They just merge one thing into the next without making a separation and unpacking their bag and repacking their bag, their mental bag, and moving on. Because it's just we don't have things that you need, and you're carrying it into the mountains, and you have a swimsuit, and maybe you don't need that, and you don't have your ski. I don't know, but just stop for a moment. And it seems silly, but just 1 minute of just ideally doing some deep breathing, because most of us just breathe really shallow,
Yeah.
because that tells your body when you do the deep breathing, it tells your body, hey, I'm safe. Like, so that's why when somebody jolts me, let's say somebody scares me for a second and I'm like, like I immediately go, okay, wait, I need to deregulate that. Like, I'm not carrying that with me the rest of the day or the rest of the hour. I'm going to like get rid of that and go back to calm. Like, recognize that you need to reset between these moments. So let's say you just dropped your kids off at school, you come home and you sit at a desk and you start pounding away on the keyboard. Stop for a minute. Like, breathe. Give your mind that space to go, okay, let the morning go, the chaos of the morning or whatever just happened, and then let's start again.
Yeah. Yeah, it's flow, right? You have to be in a state of flow mentally, energetically, in order to be effective, I think, in order to hit the performance that you want to hit.
Right.
Yeah. So, one of the things that, uh, you know, we haven't talked about yet, and I think it's really important to, is around this topic of, okay, you do end up hitting some sort of issue, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you fail in some capacity, whatever that might be. How do you bounce back from the setback? And I imagine like developing that mental resilience that we're kind of dancing around talking right now. But how do you bounce back from that? What is the key advice that you'd give an entrepreneur there?
Right. Well, first of all, I'm a huge advocate of using the word perseverance over resilience, and I'll
Okay.
explain. So I think of resilience as you get knocked down and you get back up. You get knocked down, you get back up, and that's awesome. Where perseverance is, you get knocked down, you get back up, and you keep on moving. Like, you move. And so that's why I like perseverance better. I like to think of it that way. I mean, they're tied together, right? But how is it that you do that? And for those who saw the little clip that you and I had done, or when you recorded this for this event, I talk about expecting the unexpected, expecting the challenges, and actually expecting them to be bigger and different than you expected. So even though you can't predict what they're going to be, you can predict a few things, but you have to expect that they're going to be much bigger than you thought. And you might not, overcome every challenge the first time. How do you get through that? Well, first of all, knowing that's going to happen. Like, if you just go, oh, well, yep, I knew I was going to fail at some point. You think about a student in pilot training, absolutely everybody fails at some point. I mean, anybody, even in aviation in general, it's one of the more challenging things. People think, I'm going to go fly. And then like, wow, this is harder than I thought. Yeah, it's going to challenge you. And we have to be okay with failure, because failure is just information. It does not define you. It just gives you information. So one of the things I like to do is, if you don't learn from your failure, if you just go, oh, I'm going to bury that under the rug and move on, that's not good then. I mean, that's truly not good, because you're not learning from it. Then that's what I would call a true failure.
Okay.
But if you can go, okay, what happened? Why did that happen? And dig it out, because sometimes what went wrong is not actually what you thought it was. The surface reason of the problem, whatever it is, like if you go, what happened? Oh, this screwed up because of this. If you go, why did that happen? Oh, well, this. Oh, why did that? Oh. And you get to the root cause, that the 5 whys or whatever, get to the bottom of it. A lot of times it's a lot simpler than you think. So here's an example. when I was going through weapons school, we were doing time on target bombing. And my bombs were not hitting the target. They were like seconds off. And I could not get them on target on time. And I was getting frustrated. And I was going to fail this ride. And I thought, I couldn't figure out what the heck was happening. And we could have left that and gone, I suck. She sucks at time on target bombing. You know, we need to work with her. We didn't have a fix though. We dug it out. We learned that I was grabbing the wrong data from the heads up display and putting it in the system. That's all it was. So like I could have left that flight feeling like the worst pilot, terrible, when really it was just one simple fix. So first, when you have a failure, you have to be interested in it. You have to be put on
Mm,
your curiosity hat.
yeah,
Just be curious.
yeah,
It's huge for entrepreneurs to be curious. And the other thing I want to highlight is that so many of us are like, okay, I made this mistake and I'm never going to make it again. So I'm never going to forget it. So I'm going to carry this around. Now, the problem is like that mistake is, I mean, think of it as a bowl of crap, right? I mean, I don't want to carry this around. Or, people try and hide it. They're like, I didn't do that, or
yeah,
whatever. I like to use this analogy because the truth is
yeah,
that you don't need all of that to remember. You want to filter it out. So let's say you put that bowl of crap and you filter it through a strainer with some water and you come out with some gems. You don't need all that stuff that came with it. You just need the gems of information. You can
mhm,
walk away with something easier to carry and much more pleasant to share with those that have gone behind you. And you will learn as you share with others your mistakes, you learn too. So,
mhm. I love it. Yeah, and so this is I was just jotting down a couple of things there as you were talking, and one of the things that I think entrepreneurs sometimes have a hard, or just humans in general, have a hard time sometimes is facing into the fact that you did fail, right? So you kind of avoid, you know, the situation. You avoid the tough talk that you have to have with yourself, I think, sometimes, right? And so avoidance is a big problem. Obviously, we need to tackle it. We need to analyze what had happened. So in your example in the bombing, right? So you started analyzing. I imagine you were curious, analyzing what you were doing, going through the steps again, and then identifying where the mistake was. But unless we do that, unless we are curious, unless we do the analysis, unless we are willing to basically face into whatever it is, um, and stop avoiding, we're never going to get there, right?
right. And I think as an entrepreneur too, it's important to seek your mentors, seek peers, seek when you might struggle to find the root cause of a problem and you might not want to share your errors with others, but you need to find some people you feel comfortable sharing with because sometimes you're not going to be able to figure it out on your own. And talking through it with someone else, A might help you figure it out, just that alone because you're slowing it down as you speak it, or even if you maybe even write it down, you're slowing things down in your brain. You can able to digest it a little bit better. So that might help solve it, plus bouncing off someone else that you trust who's not going to judge you, that who's just going to, you can be candid with them. So candor and curiosity are huge.
Yeah. Now, one of the things that, I hear a lot from other people who are really focused in a similar space to what you are, they talk a lot about visualization and the power of visualizing. Is that something I'd imagine you must have been trained on as well, right? When you're going through your training, because you have to probably walk through the motions in your mind that you're going to take. Is that true? And what can
It
you
is
share with entrepreneurs about that?
It is true. I would say in aviation, we do something called chair flying, and I think personally, I believe there's difference between visualization and chair flying. To me,
Okay.
chair flying is like going through the steps and the motions and doing the thing, flipping the switches, imagining I'm doing it, but more process based. Whereas visualization, to me, includes how do I want to feel when I get to that moment. So if you visualize like I'm up flying, I'm doing a loop, and I'm like killing it, like I'm imagining this is awesome. Like
Yeah.
that actually matters and can play an important role in how you perform it when you're up there. So I think that piece of it is really important, and visualizing what we're doing. And the other thing that kind of ties along with visualization is how are you defining yourself? How do you see yourself? What are you looking for? Because our brains are really interesting in the fact that the brain can't actually, like, it has to filter stuff out. We can't take in all the data that's coming at it. So it uses what's called the reticular activating system to filter out stuff. And what does it filter out? Well, it's all based on what you believe. So for example, if I believe that I can't make a sale, then I'm going to see every hitch and every problem along the way that shows that, in fact, I suck at sales. I can't do this. Because that's a lot of times what entrepreneurs struggle with, right? Making
Yeah.
sales. It's like it's like if I were to show a picture of a bunch of colorful things and I say, find the red things. And then I take the picture away and I ask you, hey, which yellow things are there? You'd be like, wait, what? I wasn't looking for yellow.
Yeah.
That's exactly what your brain is doing. So if you're not telling yourself that you can make a sale and you can be good at this and I can do this, or whatever it is that your hiccup is in your mind, then your brain is literally limiting those things from you seeing those successes that will help, which is really important for us. That's part of this process-based goal thing, right? We're stopping and going, hey, look at this success that even though I haven't reached the pinnacle yet, I'm giving myself credit along the way. And you can't do that if you're not seeing those opportunities.
Hmm. Hmm. So, in terms of like practical tips on visualization, then, because I think there's a lot of people get different kinds of advice, I guess, on how to do that. So, if you're sitting here, you've got a big thing that you have to do in your business. Can you walk us through what you do specifically from a visualization standpoint?
Yeah, of course. Well, first of all, I mean, I think it's important that you kind of get in that just open-minded, relaxed state where you're really going to impact your mind.
Okay.
So, I mean, you got to start off with just I won't talk you through all this specific details like the stuff I teach in my class, but take a few deep breaths and maybe go through all five of your senses to kind of fully get yourself in the moment, and then just be just sit for a minute, and then what you want to do is you want to picture yourself in that place with as many of your senses as you possibly can. So it
Mm-hmm.
makes it very real. Like if I were to start in detail describing a lemon to you and then like we talk about you biting, your mouth will start watering. It's very interesting. So
Yeah.
the brain it's like it's actually happening. So that when especially if it's something scary or makes you really nervous, if your brain if you visualize it, your brain doesn't really know the difference between you doing it and actually visualizing it. So if it's something that feels threatening, if you go into that situation, practice feeling confident, practice how I'm going to smile, I'm going to, whatever it is that you need to do. When you get there, your brain will less likely stop you. Just like that's why, going back to the sports analogy, a gymnast who is practicing something scary, visualizing it helps them because their brain's like, if they don't visualize it, their brain's saying, hey, this is scary, we can get hurt, I'm not doing this. And that's literally, a lot of gymnasts have this like mental block where their body won't do it. It's their brain stopping them.
Mm.
But if you visualize it as if it's happening, your brain will go, oh, I've seen this before, this is safe, I didn't get hurt. Where it opens it up for that to happen. And so that's why, one of the things is really important for you to, bring all those senses in, and especially the emotions that you want to feel.
Yeah. Yeah, I imagine you must do this, that's something that you mastered in order to be a great keynote speaker yourself, right? You probably do some of that visualization before you get out onto the stage and build that strength, right?
Yeah. And lots of practice, and
Yeah.
the other thing too, that ties into this is the whole idea of nerves, right? So,
Yeah.
um, our, our physiological reaction to nervousness and excitement are the same. And a lot of people don't recognize that. So what happens is that if you start getting a physiological response, maybe you get a little sick to your stomach, maybe you start sweating, maybe your heart beats a little bit faster, you get sweaty palms. Those are the same responses to when you're excited. So you can if you tell yourself, "Oh gosh, I'm nervous." Your brain, it's like putting a weight vest on your brain going, "Oh," and your brain's like, "Oh, I must not be ready." And it interprets it that way. And so it's actually, your body is actually giving you that because it goes, this matters. This is important. You need this adrenaline. You need this. Yeah, it might feel a little, but you can you can frame it as excitement, and that way it's not going to accelerate your performance, but it's going to stop you from limiting yourself, because essentially when you tell yourself you're nervous, you're limiting yourself and what you are truly believe, capable of mentally, if you will, and like being emotionally present and everything that goes with it. And so my again, back to my gymnast, she's when she was 10, I explained this to her and I said, hey, embrace this. Like, it's good. It's a good thing. Don't treat it as something bad. I said, tell yourself you're excited. Like, actually say it out loud. And that's what I tell everyone. I'm excited. I'm excited. So whenever you start to say I'm nervous, which is going to happen, like, I have the thoughts too, right? It's what you do with the thoughts. Like, I'm not immune to negative thoughts. I'm not immune to negative emotions. It's what you do with those thoughts. It's what you do with those emotions. Are you going to just let it take over? Or are you going to go, nope, I'm in control here. I'm excited. And maybe I don't believe it at first, but you say it enough and you force yourself, like put a pencil in your mouth and make your face smile. It, it actually will help you feel like that. And going back to my gymnast, she couldn't do it. She was like, so she would say, I'm nersited. So she would like start to say nervous. She'd go, I'm nersited. Okay, if that works for you, great.
Yeah. Well, words have power. Thoughts have immense power, right? And so the things that we tell ourselves, the things that we think, are the things that are going to become the limiting beliefs, right? And so we have to break through that. So I like that. Well,
Absolutely. And yeah.
go ahead.
Did,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I was just gonna say, so when we get when my daughter, she gets nervous and she tells herself that, it helps, it helps anyone kind of reframe and move forward and not be as nervous about whatever it is we're doing. I know it sounds a little basic, but it's again, you mentioned talking to yourself in your mind, and one of the things I have my students do in the course I teach is do a thought inventory. And
Mm,
people think it sounds kind of crazy, but I can't tell you how many people will come back to me and say, wow, I had no idea how negative I was in my own head. Because oftentimes people don't pay attention to it.
yeah.
But one of the things I like to say is, who do you talk to and listen to the most? And like, if I give a keynote, I'll ask people to write that down. And at the end, I say, hey, did you write your own name down?
Yeah.
Because you might not be talking out loud to yourself. I mean, some of us do, right? But we talk and listen to ourselves all day long.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
think about what you say to yourself. If
Yeah.
you saw a little kid walking around and there's somebody trailing them going, you suck. I can't believe
Yeah.
you did that. What were you thinking? That was stupid. What an idiot. Why are you even doing this? You'd be like, get away from them. Like, you
Yeah.
can't do that. But yeah, that's how so many of us, and me too, I catch myself going, wait, I teach this. Why am I talking to myself like that?
Yeah. 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 Completely. And you're so true on that, right? Because like even this morning, I was shaving and I was looking at the mirror and I was like, oh my God, like how did I get so friggin' old so quick? And
Embrace
so I
it,
saw
right?
saw some new wrinkles and stuff, right? It's just like, man, I'm getting to be an old guy. And then I'll start thinking like I'm an old guy, right? And so I need to turn that around. It's just like, like how did I get so experienced? This is fantastic. I'm gonna
Those are
put
wisdom lines, man. They're
Yeah,
wisdom lines.
yeah, totally. So before I ask you a little bit about burnout, I want to tackle that one a little bit. Um, what I'd imagine you must have some resources, some tools, or someplace to send people to learn a little bit more about what you do. Can you share with us where people should be going to try to find more about you and the things that you do?
Yeah, and in fact, I kind of, I went through this lesson already, but I can share a little QR code with you guys all on the screen here.
Yeah, that'd be
Let's
great.
see if I can get it to work. It's not working. Okay, share my screen.
Yeah, you should be able to just share your screen there and throw it up. So anybody that is watching this or the recording, that would be fantastic. What are they going to get on the other side of the QR code?
They will get a lesson in how to battle nerves.
Oh, excellent.
Why is it? Of course, I'm struggling here. It's not. I don't know what you're seeing. Not the right thing, are you?
I'm seeing the funnel, kind of like all of the
I don't know why it's not letting me. Oh, here we go. Let's try it again.
Not a problem at
Screen.
all.
It worked yesterday. Of course, it doesn't work today, right? That's how. Here we go. I think I figured it out. My apologies.
No,
Techno. So a free
how's
lesson
it?
on battling nerves. And the other thing that'll happen is, so essentially, I kind of already talked through it, but this is a 5 minute lesson that goes in a little more details on like the whole nervous versus um, excited thing. But you can also fill out a little thing that's when I haven't launched my self leadership mindset course. So right now, I'm just teaching mental performance training to pilots,
Okay.
but it's been so successful and people have liked it so much. Like, hey, my spouse could use this, my kid could use this, but they're not a pilot. And so I did create a course that's launching within the next 3 to 6 months. And if they want to get the information on that, they can go ahead and fill out the information there. But the other thing I was going to mention as we were talking about nerves is that's really important is that people need to understand their level of activation.
Hmm.
Meaning, so I'll tell a story. When I was at weapons school, I was like running around, I would say like a chicken with my head cut off, right? And my fellow classmates, one of my classmates said to me, "Hey, Tammy, you're pinging, ping, 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 all the place off the walls, right?" And I
Yep.
was like, "Wait, what? I'm pinging? I am? Okay." So I was like, "Okay, I'm going to consciously work on this." And so I did. And I was like, "Okay, I'm going to be calm. I'm going to be, focused and whatever." And so then a couple weeks later, he comes up to me and he says, uh, "You're still pinging." And, I looked at him and I said, "You know what? Well, clearly that works for me. So I'm just going to go with it." And at the time, what I didn't understand is that everybody has their own level of activation that works for them. And it's important for you to identify where that is for you because too many people try and put themselves inside the box of what society thinks or what they think society thinks. For example, people think we should be calm, cool, and collected. And if we're not ready. And again, now we're telling our brains that we're not ready because we're not calm, cool, and collected.
Yeah.
Well, that's not how I am. And when I was a gymnast in high school, I remember I was doing these front walkovers on the beam. They're scary because you put your hands down and then you put your foot down, and I was always worried I would miss. And I had to do 10 routines and I never missed, and I did double in like you do two in a row. And it was like routine number 6, and I thought to myself, well, this is so dumb. Like, why am I nervous? I never miss. And again, having that nervous in my mind, and so I just went for it. And I'm like, I'm done being nervous, and I went for it. And you can imagine where I'm going with the story.
Yeah.
I missed, and I ripped my ACL, my knee.
Oh
I
no.
had to have knee surgery, all because I didn't understand that that was good for me. That was
Mm.
I am a highly activated person. I perform the best while I'm like ping 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 all over the place. So for somebody to try and put me in a box and say you need to be calm is not good for me, and I don't perform well. So understanding that is key for people to know.
Yeah. Well, and this is something that I really struggle with in terms of just society always telling people how they should be, because one thing that we have realized, over the last number of years is that there's a tremendous amount of neurodivergence within the population. And so we all show up in different ways and we have different things that are going to work for us based off of, the way that things are firing in our heads and so on. And so, yeah, you have to find what works. But the part that I love best about what you said there is just that curiosity. Be curious. And this is something that I'm always telling my staff. Like when we end up, um, like really business success is based off of like the operations of a business is based off of the processes. How good are the processes? How refined are things, right? And so that's the part that I really am trying to cultivate and internalize here for our team is that
Hmm.
we need to all be curious about everything that we're doing in the business throughout the day to see if there's ways that we can improve because we're the ones that can impact that. And
Right.
so that's where we're really trying to focus on. So I love that when you mention that. One thing that I wanted to tackle before we go here is burnout. So a lot of high performing entrepreneurs, they will oftentimes get to a place of burnout. And so I think I know where you're going to maybe go here with the answer, but what do you suggest people do to prioritize their well-being and prevent that burnout from occurring so that they can maintain high performance, like you said, the resilience uh, versus perseverance, right? So they can persevere and continue performing at the level that we all want to and need to in order to really excel.
Right. Well, I mean, there's several things, but and this may not be where you think I'm going to start, but is
Okay.
not starting to understand, like, don't, you don't want to end up with regret, right?
Mm-hmm.
So priority wise, for example, I'm super busy. And I think that people, and everybody is, right? I actually choose to never make that when somebody says, how are you? I never say, oh, busy.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
that's not an answer to me. I'm choosing,
yeah,
this is a choice I'm making. But what I want to clarify when I say, I'm not making time for that right now, if it's something, is that when I'm really busy, it's my business that suffers, not my family. Because my family is the priority, and then it's my business that I'm getting stressed out about not getting stuff done. And I feel good about that. Now, I don't know, not everyone can do that. Depends on if their livelihood is built into their business, but if you're happier and you're fulfilling your, priorities as the whatever role is a spouse or a parent or friend, whatever it is, personally in your personal lives, your work should support that, right? So I think that's really important. The second thing is finding that peace throughout. We kind of talked about that already, but where in your day can you just stop and take a few deep breaths? Where in your day is there calm that you can use? Like driving in the car is one of those times. Are you one of those people that when you're making dinner, you're like, just another thing I have to do? Or when you're vacuuming, you're like, oh my gosh, I have to get, you're like, how are you going to look at everything? And I truly, I mean, I fall into the trap too. Like, I got to clean the game room because the kids are, they made a mess of it. And I have somebody coming over right now. And I don't have time to wait for the kids to come home and clean it. And I could get mad about that, right? Or I can just go, you know what? Vacuuming is kind of peaceful, and find the silver lining. And again, sounds cheesy, but that's a lot of how I operate. I was getting really frustrated with cooking, feeding 5 people 3 times a day, essentially, because I've taken that on personally. I've chosen to do that, but then it was getting to be a burden, and I was getting mad, and I had to stop and go, okay, and actually tell myself, like, I enjoy cooking. Like, let's make this fun. Let's choose things like, like, how am I get, and I solve the problem of how to make it more fun. But the other thing I want people to keep in mind too is when I was probably, I don't know, I was working full time as an instructor pilot. I had 3 kids. I had a small business on the side, and my husband has a very busy job as well. He'd gone a lot, and I would have, women who didn't do quite as much, come to my house, my friends or whatever, and they'd say, "Oh my gosh, oh yeah," because I was getting my master's at the same time. They were like, "How do you do all these things that you do?"
Mm-hmm.
And at first I was like, oh, you just do it, you just do it. And I had so many people tell me that, aren't you stressed? Aren't you stressed? Aren't you stressed? That after her hearing that so many times, it's like my mind caved in
Mm-hmm.
and gave in to the whole idea that society thinks that I should be stressed because I'm doing all these things, even though I've been like this my whole life. Like, I literally can look at high school when I got mono. My mom was like, you gotta stop doing stuff. I said, no, I love this. I love being busy. It was a matter of embracing it. And again, looking at your circumstances and going, do I love these circumstances? I'm gonna make the best of it, or I'm gonna look at everything like a burden. Because it's a totally different lens. And you can perform and accomplish so much more and avoid burnout if you look it through the lens of like the what is fun about this? What is good about this? How am I help? Is this something I want to do? There are definitely moments where I lose it. Like I told you, where I said that I think that my emotions are an early warning radar. So when I start like snapping at my kids and my husband, I'm like, whoa, okay, something's going on, and I need to take a couple steps back, and I need to reset, because that's not there's that's my moment. I go, okay, I'm doing too much. Something's got to give, and it's going to be okay that I do something 2 days later than I wanted to do it, because that's just how I take care of myself. Does that all make sense?
Yeah, yeah, it totally does. And I like the perspective that you've shared. And this is one of the things too that I would say is we've all been there before where, something unexpected happened. For instance, you got sick, like with the flu or with the, some strain of COVID that's going around, and it kind of lays you out for a couple days, and you don't really get much done in those couple days, right? The world didn't come to a crunching stop either. And So going back to what you were talking about at the very beginning, it's about identifying, prioritizing what it is that you need to get done, and then using those mental exercises and tricks. I think is a good term too, to really keep yourself at that performance mentally that you need to be, and realize that yeah, you might not get through everything, but the burnout is going to create a bigger issue. So take the moments, pace yourself a bit, because you're no
Yep.
good to anybody if you're burnt out, if you're overwhelmed, and you're in a place of inaction because of it.
And one powerful thing that helped me as an entrepreneur early on is when somebody identified that, I think a lot of entrepreneurs are high performers. They really go after things. And if you're looking at, are you taking the time to define success for you, or are you letting
Mm.
society determine what success means for you? So for example, when I start my business, like your mind is like, I want to be this big business that everybody knows with tons of people. And I'm like, my friend who was kind of coaching me at the time, she's like, is that really what you want? And I
Yeah,
was like, well, no. But because my mind was just going to what does the world see as super successful? And
yeah,
so she said, what's successful for you? Well, I want to, I want to help people on a, a regular basis with, whatever, and define that so that you can go, I'm okay with just being a small business. That's okay. That's success to me. If I'm continually striving for something that I really don't even want, because she saw that I was self-sabotaging because I really didn't want that. So I wasn't doing the
mm,
things I needed to do. So if you're avoiding something that you need to do, you might want to look at what are you really doing it? Are you avoiding it because you don't really want the outcome of that if it were to happen anyways? Like, can you take on more clients for real? Like,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
Very interesting. Yeah. So what? How do you define success? What is your
well,
definition?
success for me is really comes down to, am I with my family and fully present when I'm with them?
Okay.
And am I able to help make a difference in people's lives? Those two things are important for me. The money is nice, but that's not a driving factor in what I do. I mean, at some point, doing free work gets old, right? So that piece of it's nice, but you know, I love helping people. So when I'm, my family's taken care of and I'm with them completely when I'm spending time with them, and the time I'm not with them, I'm helping people and making a difference. In my classes, when people say, wow, I didn't realize that so many other people struggle with the same stuff I do. I'm like, yeah, even I do. We're human, right? Not immune to these things. It's just, how do you handle it? How are you
Yeah.
going to press on?
Yeah. Yeah. Very good. Well, this has been enlightening. I really appreciate you sharing your experiences, your knowledge, the trainings, the advice that you have on this topic, because it doesn't matter what our goals are if we aren't mentally prepared to achieve those, and really intentional about the way that we're tackling what we feel is our success metrics that we want to achieve. We're never going to get there. And so it all starts, I think, with us inside, and mental preparedness is such a massive, massive part of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Tammy. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you sharing the information. Again, anybody who wants to connect with you, where do we send them?
You can find me at LinkedIn. That's probably if you want to connect directly with me, or you can go to my website, which is crosscheckmentalperformance.com.
Perfect. Well, thanks a lot, everybody. I hope you have a wonderful day, and get out there and start performing at the peak that you possibly can, and get the mental stuff sorted out. And turn to Tammy if you need any support. She's going to be more than happy to help, I'm sure. Thanks,
Thank you for having
everybody.
me.
Thank you, Tammy.